you do the thing with me?
Earth, fire, air, water. Only the Avatar can master all 4 elements and bring balance to the world.
Today, I am reviewing The Legend of Korra, and Legend of Korra is the successor to the beloved series Avatar: The Last Airbender, where this time we follow the next Avatar, Korra, as she faces adversity and fights to keep the world safe from the evil forces of both the physical and spiritual worlds. So, the first time I watched The Legend of Korra, I didn't love the show. I liked it, but I was still kind of holding on to Avatar: The Last Airbender and how that show was. But after watching the show again for the review, I actually grew to appreciate it more because I wasn't trying to compare it to the previous show. And so that made me enjoy it a little bit more. However, the show never hit that point where it was consistently bringing good episodes. It was kind of like a mixed bag of phenomenal and mediocrity. You have to get through some not so good scenes to get to the really good scenes, and it's like that through all of the seasons, some more than others. But what the show does get right is introducing all of the industrial elements, like cars, radios, zeppelins. It kept all of the qualities of Avatar: The Last Airbender, but it made this show still feel fresh and innovative. They incorporated so much more of the spiritual aspect of the world. It gets more and more interesting as the show continues on, as it delves more deeper into the lore. The animation for Avatar: The Last Airbender was great, but Legend of Korra takes the animation to a whole new level. The art style does look different from the original show, but I think for the better. The actual movement of the animation is greatly improved, with even more creative and intricate fighting and action sequences. Every single action scene raises the stakes. You feel the tension. Now, what the show did that they didn't do in the original is that they incorporated more 3D animated images into the show. I didn't feel like that always meshed well. Some images looked good, but like Aang's statue and army vehicles, I feel like those and a little bit more stuff really stuck out, and it kind of took me out of the show a little bit. I have to say that I really appreciate the show's maturity. And just like Avatar: The Last Airbender or another kids show like Batman the Animated Series, they don't ever really talk down to kids. However, the parts that are more child-friendly feel out of place sometimes. The Last Airbender had light-hearted moments too, but it was better written and better balanced the more mature aspects of the show, and I just feel like Legend of Korra doesn't do that as well. Most of the jokes are lowbrow humor, but it still made me chuckle. The writers of The Last Airbender and Korra do know how to make good comedy when it works, though. A great example of what I love is that this particular scene is when Ikki, one of Tenzin's children, gets captured by these two guys. So she's really sad about the fact that she's trying to find Korra and they can't find her. And so the guys are like, oh, let's help you. And so they bring out this map and just subtly, she just puts her hands out there, her arms out of the rope that they tied her in, and she's starting to look over the map. And what I like about the scene is that it didn't call attention to itself. It's such a simple visual gag, but I feel like it was very effective. So I want to talk about the seasons of the show. So overall there are 4 seasons or 4 books. And I want to talk about the ending of season 1. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I did feel like it was a cop-out. The show looked like it was going in a familiar direction and then it didn't, which I am grateful that they did that because then we'd have to go through basically Avatar: The Last Airbender again. But I feel like for everything to be fixed in the last 10 minutes of the show, it didn't sit right with me either. I firmly believe that season 4 is the best season out of the 4 seasons. Overall, season 4's quality bounced around the least. I also feel like the final battle of season 4 was the strongest. I do have a problem though of how the show ends. I feel like the characters that were introduced throughout the whole entire show didn't get a proper send-off. Being with friends and family were the central thing throughout the show, and they should have showcased that more. Since the last season wasn't shown on Nick's channel, I feel like they should have gone all out. Like, just went ahead and had the last episode be a full hour. I mean, what's 20 more minutes, really. It would have given them more time to say goodbye to all of the characters that we've grown attached to. They spent so much time on the final battle that I just feel like the conclusion felt so rushed. I have to say that the music in The Legend of Korra is so beautiful. It kept some of the style from The Last Airbender, but also included some unique strings and wind instruments. Since the world integrated some 1930s flair, the music also reflects that, and I think it fits the show really well. So now I'm going to move on to the characters of the show. So across the board, the acting is pretty much fantastic. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the actors. I'm just going to mention their names. I applaud its show for such strong female characters. As a female growing up, I was trying to look for a female I could look up to, and there really wasn't that much out there. I kind of wish this show came out when I was younger, because it would just kind of help me feel more confident and better about myself. However, I do feel like the male characters of the show never really had as much to do as the females. They were important, but I just feel like they gave all the cool scenes to the girls. Even though I appreciate what the show has done for females, it would have been better if the show gave an equal amount of stuff to do to both genders. I don't want to compare The Last Airbender to Korra too much, but I do feel like the characters aren't as engaging as The Last Airbender. I liked all of them, maybe a little bit more now since my second viewing, but they're just not as memorable as the first show. The fact that I had to watch the show over and then connected with them is a little bit of a problem. I feel like you should connect with the characters the first time around. So let's get on to our avatar, Korra. What I love about her is that she is tough but also vulnerable. She experienced real fear towards all of the enemies she faced. Sometimes I feel that in these types of shows, you don't really get to see the main character experience fear about little things like maybe losing your abilities or not stacking up to the person that people want you to be. What the writing got right was that me, as an audience member, experienced the same kind of emotions that she was experiencing at a particular moment. When it got intense, I was scared for her. It was really hard for me to decide if I liked her or not. It took her a long time to mature. I feel like she made progress towards the end of the first season, but then season 2 came along and she kind of acted more childish than ever. It kind of undid all of the character development done in the first season. A lot of times she acts before she thinks things through. She can be irrational at points. People give her good advice and she ignores it half the time. For a long time, she didn't figure things out on herself. She kind of had to have the answers like spoon-fed her, and it really stumped her character growth. She can be hot-tempered, and when things don't go her way, she kind of loses her cool. But I actually love that about her. Some things are frustrating what you have to endure, but halfway through season 2 onwards, her character learns so much. After something traumatic happened towards the end of season 3, the way she looked just made me want to cry. It was so heartbreaking. It makes me proud as a viewer to see just how much things she had to overcome and how all of her hardship made her stronger as the Avatar, but also as a person. Plus, I love her hair in season 4. And the voice actor for Korra is Janet Varney. So now I'm going to get on to Mako and Bolin. You feel a little sad for them when you learn that they had to live on the streets and they only really had each other to look out for. That kinship that Mako and Bolin has is just beautiful. They don't always see eye to eye, but they always have each other's back. What I think is one of the great aspects of the show is the importance of family. Just like any family, they have fights and disagreements, but at the end of the day, you need each other. Now for Bolin, it took me a long time to warm up to him. For the most part, he was a comedy relief, and I didn't always like his jokes. He reminds me kind of a puppy dog. He's kind of a softie, and he's friendly to everyone, even enemies. He becomes a mover star, which is like their version of a movie star. I could totally understand how he could have a career like that. He's very theatrical. In the end, I actually ended up liking that aspect of his character, and it made for an awesome fight scene towards the end of season 2. And the voice actor is PJ Byrne. Now for Mako, man, I like him, but he just can't handle women. There's a time where he's involved with both Korra and Asami at the same time, and surprisingly, I didn't hate him for it. I think his problem is he just doesn't know how to say no, and he just is so naive. It's actually kind of cute. He means well, so that's why I don't mind, and plus, in the end, he owned up to it, and he knew that what he did was wrong, so that kind of helps that he's aware of his problems. I do find it commendable that he joined the police force and he became a detective. All he wants to do is just make the city safe for everyday civilians. And the voice actor is David Faustino. And let's move on to Asami. And Asami's great. I think I connected with her the most because at first everyone kind of thought she was just a pretty face, but soon found out that she can hold her own. Her father, Hiroshi Sato, is a famous inventor in the world. He built all sorts of things like cars, roads, and other notable gadgets. His company is huge, and Asami contributes a great deal to it after the first season. And speaking of Hiroshi, the way the show handled Asami and her father's relationship, I thought was perfect. He did an awful thing, and she has every right to be angry. But you felt the sincerity with Hiroshi, as he knew what he did was terrible, but he wants to make amends with his daughter. It was very touching the way that storyline played out, and I think it just made her character a lot more interesting. She's not a bender like the rest of the group, but she can fight. About Kurosami, I will bring that up later. And the voice actor is Chazelle Gabriel. Now, before I continue on with the rest of the characters, I do want to mention the romance. I feel like it's a little bit too central in this show, and it kind of reminds me of like a Nick or a Disney Channel teen live-action show. The Last Airbender had some romance too, but I feel like with this show, it halts the story just to tell you, hey, this person likes this person. And I think this show would have been stronger if they didn't focus on it as much. With that being said, even after the whole group at one point had a crush on the other, the strength and importance of their friendship is unbelievable. They have an understanding, and even though they fight, they're still there for each other. I would even say they're more like family, despite the fact that 3/4 of the group dated each other. So now I want to move on to Tenzin and his family. And I think what's the great thing about having a show like this so far into the future from the first show is that you get to see those characters' children and maybe their kids. So I'm going to start with Aang's children, Tenzin, Kaya, and Bumi, which it's funny that he named Bumi after Bumi from The Last Airbender. I have to say that Bumi must have hung around Sokka a lot because he definitely reminds me of him. His attitude, a lot of the ideas he has actually make sense, and he's a comedy relief. And the voice actor for Bumi is Richard Riel. There's not much to say about Kaya. She does remind me a lot of Katara. She kind of has a level head about herself, as well as she can heal waterbend. The voice actor for her is Lisa Eldestein. I love the fact that even though they're grown adults, they still act like kids. They bicker between each other, and Tenzin gets the most of it. He's like the middle kid of the family, and it's just hilarious to watch wise old Tenzin lose his cool. Okay, I have to admit, he loses his cool throughout the show, so it's not just his siblings that causes this. Now, the one thing that didn't sit right with me that they brought up was the fact that Aang paid attention the most to Tenzin and not to his other 2 children because he was an airbender. It just kind of felt a little weird knowing his character. I know he was just a kid in The Last Airbender, but Aang was mature beyond his years. And there's just no way that Aang would do something like that. Aang was all about equality and not leaving anyone out. It just didn't sit right with me. So let's move on to Tenzin. I really like Tenzin. What I actually liked about his character is that even though he gave a lot of good advice to Korra and that he is her teacher, he can't always help her. For an example, Korra is trying to get into the spirit world, and even though Tenzin has tried his hardest and has meditated so much, to try to get into the spirit world, he just can't do it. It shows that sometimes the people we look up to for answers or wisdom won't always have it. And the voice actor is J.K. Simmons. The funny thing is that I didn't know it was J.K. Simmons the whole time. And, of course, now that I know it's him, it's easy to spot out his voice. But before, I never thought to pay attention to that. But it's awesome because he is an amazing actor, and he just won the Academy Award for Whiplash, which is an amazing movie. Go check it out. It's available to rent and buy now. So I want to mention Tenzin's kids. Jinora, Ikki, Milo. Jinora reminds me of Aang with her maturity. She has such a special connection with the spirits, and she uses that connection to help Korra get into the spirit world. Ikki is animated and is a trip. But I gotta say, Milo is my favorite. It is so hilarious what comes out of this kid's mouth. So this is where the lowbrow humor comes in. Milo has a lot of fart jokes, but they're actually really funny. I have to give props to Tenzin and Pema for raising these handful of kids. I don't know how they can do it. And especially with this type of show and also Avatar: The Last Airbender, they do a really good job at casting kids to act. Maybe one's a little bit older than the others, but the others are, you can definitely tell that they're kids. And I'm just gonna cheat here on my tablet I have. And Jinora is Kiernan Shipka, Ikki is Darcy Rose Burns, and Milo is Logan Wells. So now I want to move on to the Beifong family, and that's Toph's children. And of course her two kids are Lin and Suyin. I want to start with Suyin first. She has a lot of kids. Opal and Baatar Jr. are what get the most attention, but actually my favorite of her kids is Juan. He's that goth hipster guy that expresses himself through abstract art. He's just that person that looks way into something that's so simple. Now, Suyin as a character, I liked her. She helped out Korra and her people a lot. And Zaofu, the city she built, is so gorgeous. I kind of want to live there myself. And the voice actress is Anne Heche. And now let's move on to Lin. She's one of my favorites. And Toph was the chief of police, and so Lin follows in her mother's footsteps. Although, as the seasons go on, that might have not been the way she wanted to live her life. She's pretty cranky like Toph, and she didn't really have a good relationship at first with her sister and her mother, and I can understand why she's upset. All of her points are valid, really. And Lin was awesome in the first season, fighting-wise and just character-wise. I feel, though, that in Season 2, she didn't have as much to do, but then it starts to pick up back again with Seasons 3 and 4, and the voice actress is Mindy Sterling. So now, let's move on to villains. So in the 4 seasons, there's a villain for each one, and sometimes in a season there'll be more than just one villain. So first I'm going to start with Season 1's villain, Amon. So I think Amon is the most iconic villain of the bunch. He's really easy to cosplay. I do find Amon pretty scary. It's interesting that he can take people's bending away. I think it makes him a really unique character. When you find out about his backstory, it is pretty interesting. However, I would have preferred if we didn't know that much about his past. I feel like it would have made him more menacing. The voice actor is Steve Blum. Steve Blum is a very, very famous voice actor, so he always does a great job. I just have to mention that bloodbending is still disturbing to me. It still makes me cringe every single time. So now let's move on to Unalaq. Let's be honest, he's the least liked of the Legend of Korra villain circle. But I do have to say that what makes him a little bit more interesting is that he's Korra's uncle. So the quarrel between them is even more personal. And there's not much to say about him. I think the things that he unleashes is more interesting than him as an actual character. He's not the most boring, but he isn't the most exciting either. And the voice actor is Adrian Luttrell. However, his kids, on the other hand, Eska and Desna, they are creepy, but hilarious at the same time. It's almost inhuman the way they act. It's like they're robots examining living creatures. And cheating from my tablet again. The actor for Desna is Aaron Himmelstein, and Eska is Aubrey Plaza, which we know from other shows and some movies. In Season 2, there was a second villain, Vaatu. He was very interesting, and I will talk more about his story a little later, but I have to say it did make for an awesome finale battle. Season 3 had some really interesting villains. Zahir, because of Season 2's events, he became an airbender and was able to learn a rare ability.
Watch me now. Here I go. It's easier than pie.
He can fly! He can fly! He flew!
Ghazan, he's an earthbender, but he has the rare ability to lava bend. Although honestly, I thought that's more of a firebending thing, but whatever. Minghua, she's a waterbender, but what's really cool about her is that she lost both of her arms, and so she uses waterbending to recreate her limbs. And Pli, I'm not sure if that's the way you say her name or not, but she's kind of like Explodey Boom Boom Guy from the 3rd season of The Last Airbender. These guys are highly dangerous, high-security prison escapees. And seriously, their prison cages were no joke. I do feel like these characters weren't used to their fullest extent. They had some cool action scenes, but I wanted to see more, as well as I wanted to know more about their backgrounds. With Amon, it would have been more effective to not know as much about his past, but with these guys, I feel like it would have elevated their characters if we had known more. And let me cheat off of my tablet here because I have multiple names to say. Zahir is voice acted by Henry Rollins. Ghazan is Peter Giles. Minghua is Grey Delisle, which is Azula from The Last Airbender, so I kind of like that little throwback. And Pli is Christy Wu. Now let's get to Season 4's villain, Kuvira. I think they did a great job of introducing her into the show. It kind of pulled a Batman Begins, where she was kind of like a not major character in Season 3, and then Season 4 comes along and she plays a much bigger role. Of course, in Batman Begins, it was just a Joker card, but kind of the same effect. I have to say that she's probably my favorite villain from the show, not because she's female, but because she is cold-hearted. I honestly feel like she was the best written villain up to a point. For most of the season, she's fantastic. She raises up an army and starts conquering parts of the Earth Kingdom. She wants to build an Earth Empire. Anytime a kingdom or a government has the word empire in it, it's probably not a good rulership. She even comes to a point where she's willing to give up the one thing she loves in order to succeed. However, it goes downhill at the finale when they feel like they have to make you understand her. I had a feeling they were going to do that, and it kind of ruined the character a little bit for me. But for most of the 4th season, she's very interesting to watch, and she is an amazing fighter. And the voice actor is Zelda Williams. What's interesting about The Legend of Korra is that the villain's intentions were good, but they just took it way too far. I think that Toph explains it perfectly in this particular scene. Amon just wanted equality. Unalaq merged the spirits world with the physical world. Zahir wanted freedom. And Kuvira wanted to unite the Earth Kingdom. Korra can learn from every enemy she's faced, and I think that's an interesting way to look at something bad and to turn it around to make something good. Before I move on, I have to mention something real quick. There is an episode in Season 4 where it shows you the story so far. And usually with those types of episodes, I tend to skip them because it's just more of the same. But actually they did a great job of making it entertaining. There were a few characters that commented on some of the aspects of the story. Why this is in the villain section? I love when the villains of a show are brought back for comedy relief. The villains are all calling each other, about to go hang out or something, and they try not to include Unalaq. But he's kind of like that third wheel. Even the villains in the show don't like Unalaq all that much. It's so funny, and I would not skip it. It's a filler episode that's actually really, really entertaining. So the next thing I want to talk about is Avatar 1. There was a 2-part story in the 2nd season of Korra where they showed the origin of the Avatar. And I have to say that those 2 episodes are probably the best episodes of the whole entire show. First off, the art style changed within the episodes, and it is beautiful. It's simulated like it was done with watercolor inside of a scribe. Juan first started out as a little punk, and under some circumstances, He had to learn to survive among the wild, and that's where he learned to connect with spirits. All of the spirits are cool and funny, and I love watching him interact with Wan, especially the spirit called Ai. That's apparently his name. I don't think they actually said it in the show, but I looked online and saw that was his name. I have to say that Wan grows more as a character within 2 episodes than Korra does in the 1.5 seasons that she had prior. Korra gets her turn at character growth, but it just takes a little bit more time for her to get there. It also showcases that there are 2 main spirits, Rava, the spirit of light and peace, and Vaatu, the spirit of darkness and chaos. Both have been fighting each other for centuries, and neither one can die because when there is light, there is also darkness, and vice versa. Unfortunately, Wan made some mistakes, and through a series of events, that's how the Avatar came to be. I do find it really sad the way his story concludes. I really wanted him to succeed in what he was trying to do, and I do really believe that if they merged those 2 episodes together like one short film, it would be nominated at the Oscars. Nothing felt rushed, and it showed so many stages of his life in 45 minutes. And the voice actor of Wan is Steven Yeun, and he is actually a very familiar name, or at least a familiar face to people, because he's Glenn from The Walking Dead. So now I want to talk about the cameos in the show, and first off, I just gotta say, cabbages! All jokes aside, it was nice to see flashbacks of Aang as an adult. I, of course, would have wanted to see more, but I totally understand why they didn't. From that flashback, they had a small cameo of Sokka, and what else does he talk about? His trusty boomerang. Also, I love the reference to the airbending trick that Aang can do. It actually made me laugh out loud. Katara shows up every now and then. She helps out occasionally. It was nice to see Iroh again, but I kind of feel like his cameo was fan service. I feel like you could have any other character in that role and not have the other character say Iroh, and it would be the same exact outcome. There was a nod to Dante Basco, who voiced Zuko in The Last Airbender. He came back as a voice for General Iroh, which is, I think, Zuko's grandson. And that was really nice to see, but I do feel like his voice should have been a little lower. Speaking of Zuko, it was really nice to see Zuko again, and I love the part where Korra tells Zuko, hey, I saw Iroh in the spirit world, and he's just like, what? But I have to say that my favorite cameo was Toph. She literally has not changed a bit. So I want to talk about Korrasami a little bit. The first time I watched the show, I didn't really see a hint of there being anything romantic between the two. Honestly, I never thought to pay attention to something like that. Since I had to watch the show over again for the review, I was able to keep an eye out for any romantic tension. I saw maybe only like 2 times that there was something maybe more going on. One can be explained as a close friendship, and I would pretty much act the same to any friend I have. The other is where I saw Korra actually blushing because of a compliment Asami gave about her hair. I saw the relationship more as really close friends, minus the blushing, of course. I've seen friends that are both girls that do what they do. I just think that this decision felt a little forced and out of place because there weren't enough subtle hints throughout the show. The creators came out and officially confirmed that they are a couple, and although I didn't see much signs to warrant them being romantically involved, I have no problem with it. I think it's great, and there are a lot of people out there and it means a lot to them that they did something like this. So overall, The Legend of Korra is the worthy successor to Avatar: The Last Airbender. In some ways, it surpasses its predecessor with beautiful, out-of-this-world imagery, more inspired choreography, and astounding animation. The action is movie quality, and you can't help but feel tense during those moments with a little help from the music, which complements the show so well. However, it can take a while to warm up to the characters, and they can sometimes be hard-headed, but the love, care, and respect you see from them makes you cheer the characters on. It was nice to see some familiar faces, and even though the villains weren't written perfectly, they were huge threats to not just the Avatar, but to the whole world. It can take a while to get to the good stuff, and the writing in general can be subpar with some storylines and jokes, but when it's good, it's fantastic. Korra grows so much as a person. Aang in The Last Airbender suffered through uncertainty, but Korra suffered through fear. The fear of disappointing, the fear of responsibility. At the core, Legend of Korra is about facing your fears. It's learning that sometimes what's holding you back is not others, but yourself. It has a great message about accepting who you are instead of trying to be someone you're not. It's exciting, it's beautiful, it's tragic, it's funny, and I give it 4 stars. So that is my Legend of Korra review. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it's probably more longer than I thought it was going to be, but I just wanted to get a lot of details into what I wanted to say. So that's the reason why it might be a little long, but I'm probably going to have a lot of fun editing this. So I hope, again, you had fun watching it. And before I go, I just want to give a shout out to all the toasties from Double Toasted that came and subscribed and commented on my channel. If you don't have any idea what I'm talking about, I am a member of a website community called Double Toasted. And Double Toasted is basically about these guys that they do podcasts, but also live streams of just talking about crazy things that happened in the world, talking about relevant topics like movies and video games and all of that. Also, they're critics, so they do movie reviews. And they have a YouTube page as well as SoundCloud and, of course, their website. The community is great. Can be a little bit harsh at times, but they always have your back. And I just have to thank you for subscribing again. I mean, I never thought I would have as much traction as it got. I just went on the show to just be on the show because I really wanted to talk with the guys, and I ended up mentioning my YouTube channel by mistake, and I didn't mean to, and I didn't want to, and now I have all these wonderful people coming in watching my stuff. So I hope you enjoy all of the content I have. There will be more in the future. I just took a little bit of a break because I had a mental breakdown in the last episode, and that's not the way I act all the time, so that was just a really rare case that I was just so fed up that day. But anyway, if you want to check out their site and their content, I will leave a description in the link. I'll leave a link in the description. I caught on to that as I was talking about it. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe, remember to always keep it real, and I will see you in the next review. Goodbye!